Hi, and welcome to the Business Pioneer Podcast. I'm your host, Erica Montgomery, founder and CEO of Three Girls Media Inc., an award winning digital marketing agency. Today, we're diving into an industry that's often overlooked until it becomes necessary: funeral prearrangement and planning. Our guest, Lucia Malo, spent 30 years as an educator and a librarian before a personal loss shifted her career path. And after the passing of her mother, Lucia recognized the lack of accessible information and advocacy surrounding end of life planning. And now she helps individuals and families navigate the really sensitive yet essential conversations around making final arrangements. Lucia brings a really unique approach to her work. She offers in home and virtual visits across Washington state, providing really compassionate guidance on pre planning, funeral services, and away from home assurance. Her commitment to education remains core to her work, ensuring families have the knowledge and the resources that they need before difficult decisions arise. Lucia, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you for advocating as a librarian advocacy. Thank you, Erica.
Yes, absolutely. It's a pleasure having you on the show. So, Lucia, tell us about your business and what it is you do.
Thank you. So I believe that my business is people. I am a people business person, and I bring the information to you either with a home visit or some people just walk in. I think they're afraid to come into a funeral home sometimes. So they've worked up that courage. But once they walk in, I want it to be an enjoyable visit for them. And so what I do is offer information. I have a family planning guide. And, some people are in the process of creating their wills or changing different information. And then they're asked, well, do you have a funeral to represent you? Or do you have a policy? And people will ask, well, what's a pre need? And so the difference between a pre need is we arrange, we talk about it, have a conversation, sign some paperwork, and you can prepay. Or an at need, which is the time of a loved one's passing, nothing is in place. And then you do walk into a funeral home and say, I don't know what to do. And so what I do is hopefully help families and individuals know what to do before they ask that question of, I don't know what to do.
That's a great way to put it. And why do you think that end of life planning is so difficult for individuals and families to discuss?
I think it's what you said, the end of life planning. If you think about when we are able to get pregnant and we are planning for a baby, we know there's 9 months. We talk about the baby. We're going to paint the baby's room. We're getting the clothes. We're picking out names. We're so excited, and aunties and uncles and cousins. And who is this little one going to look like? And so we focus on that. And then end of life planning is like, I don't want to talk about it. There's that
Mm,
taboo for some cultures, but I married a Hawaiian Japanese, and he is all about family, the Ohana. And so the culture, we do talk about it. We talk about Auntie. She's watching us, she's listening, we're involved in walking, and we see the wind pass the trees, and we know that the whisper of an ancestor is there with us. And so for me, it's very simple. And I hope that, and that's why I do this, is to bring that um, comfort, peace, and starting the conversation. If it's
mm.
difficult for you to start the conversation, well, let's go and have some coffee, or let's just go sit in a park, or just ask me the questions that you're afraid to ask. And the librarian in me, think about, I don't know how you feel about your previous librarian experiences, but in my library, it was often where students and parents and faculty, and when I was a community librarian, people would come and say, oh, do you have this? Do you have that? I'm looking for this. I'm looking for that. And we want to find the resources. They're not afraid to talk about anything. There's no
Mhm.
censorship. And so we're not afraid to talk about death, but I think some people are, and they're afraid to, some culture stigma. If I talk about it, then it's going to happen. So I don't want it to
Mm.
happen. So I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think that, different cultures definitely have different perspectives on end of life and what happens after we pass away and the whole death process. And so that probably feeds into a lot of people's beliefs and how comfortable they are or are not talking about it. But, it's interesting. I think if you asked most people once they pass away, what would you like to have happen? Like what kind of service would you like? Or do you want a service? Or do you want a celebration of life? Or what do you want to have happen with your remains? Or, there are so many different questions to ask. I'm sure people have opinions of what they would like to have happen. It's just getting them to talk about it and bringing up what in American culture can be a very sensitive and taboo topic.
I agree. I agree. And as last week, I presented at two different facilities, one at a rehabilitation, and I was talking with hospice nurses and helping them train their families on preparing what questions they need to talk with their families. And then I was at a 55 and older community at a different seminar. And the one woman, she said, "Oh, I'm not going to talk about that. It's not going to happen." And I smiled and I said, "Well, when it does, let me give you this information so that you have it because you will need this." And another lady chimed in and she goes, "I'm just going to dig a hole." And I said, "Well, who's going to help you dig that hole? Because you're not going to be the one digging the hole."
Mm.
It's not going to be you. So she just said, "I'm going to dig a
Yeah.
hole." So I said, it's the love of the responsibility that we leave that legacy to our family is that either we make those choices or someone else is going to make those choices for us. The state of
Mhm.
Washington, it's wonderful because you have the right for your disposition. And disposition means if you want aquamation, cremation, terramation, or burial. In the state of Washington, you get to choose. However, if you don't choose, someone is going to make that choice for you. So think about
Mhm.
buying a house or buying a car, or going out to eat. If you don't make those choices, someone is going to tell you what kind of house you're going to live in, what kind of car you're going to drive, what you're going to eat. And so, don't you love your body? Don't you love your life? Don't you want to leave a legacy of making those choices so that your children or your other family members or friends or it's just a beautiful conversation and thought process in my mind that I wouldn't want to leave that unexplained or you know Eric, I wanted to say within the first 36 hours of a passing, you have 77 decisions that you need to make. Now, I don't know about you, but when I'm making decisions, I don't want to be grieving. I want to be of sound mind. I don't want to have to go and search and, oh, where's this and look for that document or no. And that is what you explained at the beginning is when my mother passed, I had no clue. I had no clue walking into a funeral home and after that experience, I felt, no, this is my calling. I want everyone to feel comfortable. Call Lucia and let's just have that conversation. Let's just, where do I begin? And then I sit and listen and say, we're beginning here. Where do you want to begin? And if they want to tell me a
Mhm.
story, whatever makes them comfortable. And then we come to that peace. And the end result is, oh my gosh, Lucia, why did it take me 30 years to do this? It only took 20 minutes and we did this policy and all that information. And so that gives me great joy. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I love that someone like you exists that can help people navigate the right questions to ask because I think that a lot of people don't even know where to begin when it comes to making those decisions or what kinds of questions they need to ask themselves or their loved ones. So knowing that you're a resource that people can call and rely on and say, help us figure all of this stuff out is really, really wonderful. And I think the fact that you used to be a librarian and librarians, in my mind, have very analytical minds and very thoughtful minds. And so I'm sure that lends itself to this type of work really well.
Thank you. Well, I am the creative grant writer. So my husband is the analytical tech man. And so in
Hmm.
the library, I would look at the needs of what our school needed or what our community, when I worked in New York, what our small library needed. And then I creatively dream and think, what is it that we need and how do we find those resources and then write the grant and then we were able to receive those resources and I saw the happiness, I saw the joy, and people from outside would say, oh my gosh. So when I just left Texas last year, actually it was 2 years now, I thought, well, it's so hot here in Texas, and these little ones, we talk about gardening, we talk about all, how about a lab inside the library? Let's do some type of a bio lab in the library where we can grow uh,
Mm.
vegetables and flowers, and the children don't have to worry about the heat or the weeding, or and it can be science unit. My principal said, where did you get that idea? Went to the garden club in Houston, they gave us $5,000 for the grant, and the
Wow.
kids were growing in the library and enjoying it, through water, hydroponics. It was a hydroponic lab. So you
Amazing.
Yeah, so you don't think about that, but see, then when you talk about death, now we just stop the conversation. People are like, what? So we went from
Hmm.
this hydroponics, growing, resources in the library, and then death. It's just like somehow that word puts angst into the conversation. Like, what? Yeah, but death is all about stories. Life is all about stories.
Hmm.
And people say, well, that's life. Life happens. You never hear anyone say, well, that's death. Death happens. But it does, and it will. And
Every
yeah,
day.
and it is. And so that's where I bring that levity. I bring that, if we're just friends, I want you to feel like we're just friends. Yeah, come in and
Hmm.
ask and those resources. And that is important. I have a friend at one of the Olympia Senior Centers, and she will call me and she'll say, a family came in, a husband came in. He's in shock, doesn't know what to do. We need this. We've got resources. It's a great network. Lots of networks in the state of Washington, beautiful communities, a beautiful place to have the conversation about aquamation, terramation, because it's legal here. It's not just cremation. In some other states in the United States, you have two options. You can either, be cremated or you can choose burial. So Washington is very progressive. And so should their conversation be? Will body programs, if you want to go through the university, there's so many options to explore. And again, you need to talk with someone who has that resource that's dependable and reliable and honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of our viewers that might not be familiar with the terminology, can you explain aquamation and terramation?
Absolutely. So when you know the word aqua, you think of water. So
Sure.
this is, you think cremation, you think fire. Terra is earth. So this is basically how the body is disposed. So aquamation is by water. The body is put into a vessel, and alkali is used to reduce the tissue. And so you still have skeletal remains that are nice and shiny, and those would need to go into an urn, just like you would with a cremation. Now, that process takes about 8 hours. Cremation, the process takes anywhere between 1 and 3 hours. Terramation, the body is cleansed and put in I want to say like a shroud cloth of cotton, and the body is put in with alfalfa and straw and wood chips. Wood chips are used to absorb the liquid. Alfalfa is used to feed the the gut health, the little creatures that are helping you to break down your body. And the process takes between 30 and 60 days, depending. And so it goes from what I call the vessel into just a cooling off period, which is the different type of vessel. And then the body is, it makes about 280 pounds of soil. So your family then has the option of accepting as much of it or as little of it. There are places where you can have your soil. I mean, you can use it in your garden. It's clean and we have pig compost that we use at seminars for people to touch and to look and smell. And they think, what is this? This is great. Yeah, well, that's a little pig. And so, yeah, it's in a burlap bag so that it can breathe. It's natural, it's organic, and it is very environmental. It's probably what I've chosen for myself. I believe in terramation. So that's
Hmm.
organic reduction.
This is fascinating. I didn't even know those options were available. I'd never heard of them myself. So I really appreciate the education. Thank you.
My pleasure. That's what I do.
Yeah.
That's what
Oh,
I do.
I love that. I just love that. So for our viewers that are watching and are thinking to themselves, either I need to make some decisions, or maybe they've got senior parents that they need to start a conversation with. What is your recommendation for starting that conversation? Do you have suggestions for how to broach the subject?
It's a great question. Usually the subject is approached when a family has lost a loved one. They will call me and ask, my aunt just passed away. I don't have a policy in place. Uh, I would like to pre-arrange for myself. Some families contact me because they lost a parent and they didn't have a policy in place. They saw the sadness and they said, I don't want to do this for my children. I want to plan so that my children won't have to go through what I went through. And so basically I think it's just what you suggested is beginning that conversation might look um, like a walk in the park where maybe, whatever you do, if you walk your dog, how do you meet on Sunday game nights with your children, or, depending on your age, depending on what your family culture is, you might hear a song in the car and just say, well, hey, mom, we built this city. Who knows? We're talking about building, but you're in your 70s now. Let's talk about building your future on what that's going to look like. So, it can be done with humor. It can be done with research. You might have numbers or papers or things that you've been reading about and at school, or you just, you might have friends who work in a business that the conversation comes up, such as, well, we're going to plan our will. Okay, that's the conversation is going to come up. I know that I have that question every day when people call in. I don't know how to start the conversation with my mom. And so they call me and they will say, I want to pay for the cremation for my mother. And then we'll have that conversation and I will ask, well, what types of things does your mother enjoy? What types of things, and then build that into the conversation. Mostly people don't begin it because they're afraid. So find out there's no obstacles, no barriers. What would help you just be proactive in thinking about how can I remove the fear? What's preventing you from having a very peaceful, think about if you plan this in your 40s and 50s, you've got the rest of your life to enjoy. You will never have to have that conversation in your 80s. You don't have the money, or you don't have this, or you don't have family members, or you're all by yourself. That is the sad part for me, so find what it is that you're afraid of, and overcome that. My mother used to say, what did she say? She would say, turn it around. She would say, if there's something difficult, look at it and turn it around. How can you do this different? Turn it around. So yeah, I kind of think about that as I'm visually thinking about, you have a sunrise, you have a sunset. We've talked about our lives, and now it's time to talk about the sunset. And it's time to talk and walk. And there are books out there. I could recommend some books too, but those resources, I have a Canadian author that I absolutely love. There are people who work in hospice, and they're the ones that sometimes begin the conversation with a family because, like I said, we're all at different stages in our journey. This is a journey, this is our story, and we're walking it together. And it would be wonderful if we could just take someone's hand and say, here, don't be afraid. We can talk
Yeah.
about this.
Yeah, I love that. And I'd love to get one of your book recommendations.
Okay. Well, I have this is the family planning guide, and it's through Share Life. And basically, it's a planning guide and it has all of the information that you need. You can photocopy it, you can give it to your family, but you need to know what a vital statistic is. And that is what generates a death certificate. You need to know your financial information. It's just a beautiful book. It's probably about 20 pages long. We have a digital copy, but we also have a hard copy. You can download it. You can go on to you don't have to buy anything from Amazon, so it's free. All that information, and the Federal Trade Company created in the 1980s the funeral rule, and so this information is free.
Mm,
Everything is
nice.
transparent. You can call any funeral home, and they can itemize to you a price list. It's all free. So, I also have a friend, Glenn Harper, and he is a death doula, and he has resources galore. He is a librarian himself. He can quote books and titles and authors and resources. And so, yeah, I would have to drop it in the chat for you for for right now on my mind. Like just thinking about the family planning guide is the best resources.
Okay.
It has the forms that you need. Yep.
Phenomenal. Thank you. So I'm curious, how do you go about marketing your business?
That's a good question. I go individual to individual. So when I help a family, I leave them with my business card and I ask them if I've honored your time. If you feel this is of value and of worth, please feel free to share it with a friend. I also present seminars and one of the latest, again, trilogy up at Bonnie Lake. We had 52 participants and again passed out the family planning guides. And again, it was Lucia. Oh my, we never even heard of this. And so it's just by word of mouth and it's just by individual families that I serve, and they'll call me and invite me to their 55 and older community, or they'll invite me to their residence or to their church or to their school campus or, anywhere that there's a need to talk about it is where I go. So I'll take the
Mhm.
invitation and also share along the resources. So it is important to me that I don't leave you without your questions being answered. So that is, if I'm invited, and if I don't know the answer, I need to find it. That's the librarian in me. That's the research, and I need to have access to that, which I do.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Love that word of mouth referrals and working, person to person is your main method of promoting your business. You can't beat a word of mouth referral. It's, honestly, the best recommendation that you can get is from somebody who has, attended one of your talks or experienced your services personally. So I think that's really great. And for our viewers that would, love to get more information from you, or maybe would like to have you come and talk to one of their groups, how can they get a hold of you?
Fabulous. And I wanted to backtrack, Erica. Thank you, because my mom is the one who taught me this. So she was 90 years old before she passed away, and she had been working in her business for 50 years. She did word of mouth. She never advertised. Everybody knew Lucia, and she had a waiting list, and she
Ah,
was hilarious. And so I said, if mom can do it, I can do it because it's what you said. You share that trust. You trust someone to be in good hands. And so that
mhm,
I just had to follow up that. My mom is my example. So yes,
phenomenal.
I am at lucia.malo@sharelife.com. lucia.malo@sharelife.com. And I feel like I am sharing life, even though the conversation is about death, but it's definitely we're sharing life.
Phenomenal. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation and I have learned a lot. So I really, really appreciate you being on the show today.
Thank you, Erica. It's a pleasure. Thank you. And I'm
Thank
going to ask you,
you.
do you have your
Yeah,
policy in place? Because
I
that's a good
do.
question. Excellent.
Yes,
And do you
I
have the
actually
sense of
do.
peace?
I do. My husband and I both did ours a couple of years ago, and it was really a huge weight off of, I think, both of our shoulders. And we have both openly discussed with each other what our end of life wishes are, both while we're still living and after we pass. And I have full comfort knowing that my wishes will be honored. And I've also discussed it with my brother, who is the executor of our will. Just in case, God forbid, my husband and I were to pass away at the same time, in a car accident, or, you never know what's going to happen. So, we've also had a discussion with another family member, so they're aware of both of our wishes. So yes, I'm all set.
Excellent. Well, I applaud and that sense of peace and that planning and that's the smile on your face. That is it. And if I could share that message and have others say, you know what? That's it. That's what it's all about. Just to enjoy life because you planned it, it's in place. And yeah, I see you nodding your head. Yes, That's the
Yeah.
joy. That's the piece. Excellent. Thank you. Good job. Thumbs up. Thanks,
Thank
Erica.
you. I appreciate that. I'll take the kudos.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you again so much for being a guest on the show. This has been an absolute joy.
Thank you, Erica.